Good evening, City Council, and good evening, City staff. Mr. Scott, I have 2 words for you. San Bernardino? Seriously. And good evening to my fellow Burbank neighbors. I have been a Burbank resident for 17 years. I have been a licensed real estate agent for over 30. I have a Bachelor of Arts degree in architecture, and I spent 17 years as an international speaker, writing and teaching real estate pre-license and appraisal pre-license and continuing education classes. I am here this evening on behalf of, and if we can go to the slides, an organization called Preserve Burbank. I do want to make it clear I am not here on behalf of the Fayed family. If you don't know who Preserve Burbank is, we are an ethnically diverse grassroots movement of over 400 Burbank residents and business owners, encouraging, promoting, and supporting the City of Burbank's programs which preserve our community's architectural history, restore the design integrity of our community's built heritage, and inspire new contextual design for the future. We are not against new construction or progress, but we believe that the rights of the existing homeowners should be equal to that of the new homeowner, the developer, or the builder. If anyone at home or here would like to find out more about us, please go to www.preserveburbank.com. What I'm presenting on the slide right now is the Burbank Hillside Ordinance. There was some mention about the IDCO. The Burbank Hillside Ordinance is 36 years old. It has nothing to do with the IDCO, and so it should not be brought up in the discussion. There are 8 criteria. What I wanted to blow up here is if a project is appealed, City Council may not approve a hillside development permit unless, and I put in the word all for emphasis, unless the following findings are made. Now, I'm not going to bore you to death by reading these, but there are 8 of them, and it requires that the project pass all 8. If one item is in violation, the project must be denied according to the ordinance. I'd like to go down and look at the first item on here that says the home must be consistent with the prevailing neighborhood character. Now, this says prevailing, it does not say existing. I wanted to look up the word prevailing because it is prominent here. Prevailing applies to what is most frequent or common at a certain time or in a certain place. What I did is I took a look from Google, and by the way, I don't know if Burbank got a drone, but those photographs are awesome. Did we get a drone?
Not allowed to say.
The photos are amazing. Excellent. Here's the subject property, and to be fair, after watching the planning board's discussion on this, I wanted to go up higher and take the entire street. I wanted to show this neighborhood not as is now defined as the couple of houses across the street, 2 on either side, 1 or 2. I wanted to take into consideration, to be fair, the entire block. So what I did is I went down to the very bottom of this picture and started with Google Earth with the first property and worked my way down the street. I'm going to do this quickly. I want you to look at the prevailing character of the home. The first home is built in the 1970s, single-story, garage prominent in the front with low sloping roofs. The house next door to it we'll discuss a little bit later. As we continue down the hill, you'll see consistently in this neighborhood, these homes were all built about the same time. Again, single stories at the street level, sloping up. If there's a second story, the second story is predominantly to the back of the property, looking toward the hill as the view. As you continue down, you can start to see consistently what these homes look like. Now what you'll see in the very far background is the current property, which will be essentially torn down to be rebuilt. It is a perfect example of the prevailing character of this neighborhood. It's literally textbook definition of what the prevailing architectural style of this neighborhood is. As we continue around the corner, you'll see more single-story homes. You'll see the subject property up here on the hill. Even it slopes back from the street side with its second story predominantly focused down the hill. As we continue down, more single-story homes. We're going to turn about face. I'm not going to comment about the house across the street because every once in a while we miss one. As we continue up the hill, you'll see the opposite side of the street is undeveloped, with the exception of this property, which is, by the way, the largest home in the neighborhood. What's fascinating to me as an architect, as a real estate agent, and as somebody who understands appraisal, it looks like one of the smallest homes in the neighborhood. Here's why. It has no neighbors on either side. And as Fidel pointed out, you can't get perspective on how large a property is unless it's compared to properties on either side. This has no properties on either side or behind it, and the bulk of the house is built into the hill. It's actually blasted out and pushed into the hill and in no way affects the views of anyone surrounding the property. Continuing up, we have an undeveloped tract. We then go back to single-story homes, more single-story homes, and now we see this property. Next door to it, we see the last two properties. Now, this is an interesting photo because if you draw a line down the middle of it, it suggests something about what we're talking about for prevailing. If we look at the house on the left, it would suggest a very, very different neighborhood. If we isolate and look at the house on the right, I think we could argue that it suggests a very, very different architectural style. Does anybody recognize this home? I should give out an award for this. Does anybody know? This is the Brady family's house. Guess what? Built at exactly the same time. What's fascinating here is most of us know the Brady family. And to be fair, I'm going to use their logo to illustrate just what the prevailing character of this neighborhood is. Most of us know the weirdest thing about this is when they added a picture of Alice in the middle of the picture. The family's on the outside, and then there's the one person who doesn't belong in the picture, and that's Alice. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down that street, and we're going to take photographs, and I assure you, you're welcome to look at this. I have not repeated a single property. I have gone down the hill and shown you all of the prevailing properties that were all built at the same time, that all look about the same, and then we're going to drop in this one that got away. Now, to make my point here, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to pull 8 more properties continuing down. There are no duplicates here, folks. These are the predominant properties in the neighborhood, and here's another one that got away. Now, if we look at consistent with the prevailing neighborhood character, a reasonable person would have to say that the prevailing current ratio in this is 8-to-1 Brady homes to these homes. So absolutely a rational person would have to say this is not consistent with the prevailing neighborhood as it currently exists. It's a factor of 8-to-1. The second item says it must be reasonably consistent in scale and proportion to existing homes in the neighborhood. Burbank uses something to calculate scale. I have a lot of problems with FAR on this property. It's a horrible way to measure scale. FAR is the building size divided by the lot size to get FAR. Generally in Burbank, the maximum allowable FAR is 0.40, or 40% of the lot size. Now, most lots in Burbank are completely buildable. So when we measure width and depth, we know what the square footage is. This property has about 20% buildable and 80% not. So using FAR is simply ridiculous in this case. So what we have is the property here, and the applicant or their builder submitted the FAR calculation. They used the entire lot, 32,670 square feet. They divided the 4,604 square foot home by that lot size to achieve a 14% FAR. However, if we really look at this lot, instead of looking at what is the buildable pad, the current buildable pad of this lot, instead they've calculated the entire area of the property. Now we know there's a problem. You can't build down the hill in this direction because it's too steep, and if they do, it will trigger complaints from people whose views will be blocked on that side of the lot. If they build down the hill on this side, we already have proof that the neighbor complained and said, you got to back up. You're too far over the hill. So a reasonable person would look at this and say, this is the buildable pad of this property. In fact, what we've done is highlighted it in green here. There's a wonderful feature in Google that lets you drop these little balloons down on an aerial view, and it automatically calculates the square footage of that area. Down here, the actual buildable area, according to this technology, is 6,461 square feet. If we calculate FAR based on the buildable space, we have a 71% FAR. What's interesting to me is I went back and said, let's take the current home. Let's divide it by the actual buildable square footage. And is it a coincidence, but the FAR is 37%. The home right now complies with FAR. In addition, the property cannot encroach upon neighboring properties or structures through their size, location, setbacks, or height. Setbacks are in question here. My first question is this an addition? When I was in architecture school, we were taught an addition was when you took the house and you built on. You added on to it. You could look at the house and say, oh, here's the original house. That's the addition. Or you'd build up. You'd put a second story on it and say, oh, yeah, and this second story, this is the addition. This is not an addition. Now, the question is, why is it submitted as an addition? It's because our city incentivizes people to submit as an addition rather than admitting they're building a new home. Why? Because they avoid additional code requirements and scrutiny for construction and teardown, including a site survey that must be done. You don't have to do that if you're just adding on. Also, you can maintain an existing non-conforming feature of the existing home's footprint. In this case, the city's analysis said the average width of this property was 100 feet. Now, what's interesting here is side setbacks are required to be 10% on either side of the average lot width, which means this property should have 10-foot setbacks on either side. However, instead, what the applicant did is instead of looking at this buildable pad and calculating what the area was, because keep in mind, folks, the top piece of this is all driveway. You can't build on it. It's a shared driveway with a neighbor. You can't build on this. So instead of measuring across the buildable pad, they went up and they started slicing the lot into tiny slices. They actually sliced it 97 times, the entire lot, in order to reduce the width from an average of 100 to 75 feet. And the city now allows 10% of that rounded down, so now they allow a 7-foot setback on either side of the property. Here is the existing property. Here's the new addition. What you'll see is the new setback is 7 feet. The existing setback, which is non-conforming, is 9 feet. The city is giving a 4-foot reduction in the side setbacks on the property. But it gets worse. This is a flag lot. If you don't know what a flag lot is, Google it. Here's what a flag looks like. It has a post and it has a flag. The pole is not supposed to be included in the calculation of the area of the lot. But in our case, we're going to flip it upside down so it fits better the way the applicant submitted the property. And just by Googling flag lot, I found them everywhere. Here's how Pasadena defines it. Here's how La Cañada defines it. Here's how Chino defines it. Here's how Cypress defines it. What's interesting is in this one, Westminster says you do not include the pole as part of the area calculation when you're when deciding how large a lot is. This is the front setback as is traditionally understood to be on a flag lot. It ignores the length of the driveway. The pole portion of the lot was excluded from the buildable area when people do flag lot setback calculations. Here's what's interesting. The city staff is suggesting the setback is 150 feet from Joaquin, when every other acceptable practice says, no, it's the setback to the buildable pad. In this case, is it ironic that the existing home is exactly 25 feet from the driveway? I'm going to blow this up and show you. This is the actual setback of the home right now, and the applicant put a line on the drawing randomly to show what it is, and what we're doing is we're allowing them to reduce their setback by 50%. Privacy. The property cannot encroach on others. This is the current property. It has one room with 2 windows looking this way. This is the new property. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rooms, 16 windows, now with a second-story viewing perspective. And what are they looking at? They're looking at the Fayed's backyard. This is their master bedroom. This is their family room. This is their kitchen. Now, I ask everybody here, would you want someone looking into your home and backyard like this? And finally, the last criteria is about views. Now, folks, as a real estate agent, I used to also, as an architect, develop properties. When you're building a development like this, every single home in this neighborhood has views down the hill, even the house across the street. But the city staff said, nope, the view is uphill. So on the 4th of July, while everybody else is enjoying their barbecues in the backyard, the Fayed family should be throwing a Frisbee in the street because their view is uphill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Casey.